Hello, and welcome to the Bear and Chocky T wrestling recap. I am Jolly the Bear, and as always, my co-host of the show, Big Chocky T. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Charlie. How are you? You all right?
I'm good, thank you very much. Yeah.
Good.
So if you've never heard of us before, we are part of the Timber Clams podcast. We've decided to go off on our own as a tag team, a bit like all your favourite tag teams. We did this before, which was a bit daft. So we're like the new age outlaws from the DX. We are like Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell from NWO. And the Good Brothers from the Bullet Club. So we've decided to go do our own thing, even though we're part of that. So again, carry on checking the Turbo Clams podcast out. But we've decided that we wanted to go and do our own thing about Impact and AEW wrestling. So before we get into it, I would just like to give out a shout to the Johners Podcasting Network. So what this is a community of, as of right now, over 25 podcasts with an incredible group of creators that are putting out weekly content, ranging all types of wrestling, whether you're into your AEW, your WWE, your Ring of Honor, your Impact, your New Japan, no matter what. Everyone has got their own voice, everyone has got their own views, and it's a fantastic podcasting community to check out. And also we're on there. We've got people from the US, Canada, and in the UK. And it's something that we've talked about for quite a while and has become something that has just blown up in the last month, 2 months. And we're part of it, which is brilliant because it's something that we've wanted to do for quite a while. And we've now got a platform that we can be part of and be very proud of. So hats off to our chief head of the table, John Scott. So thank you for giving us a voice and a place to share our thoughts and love for the sport and wrestling like everybody else. And yeah, definitely something on there for everyone. Check us out, and we'll put the description in the link below when this goes out. And as I said, there's going to be something there for you, whether it be interviews, predictions, retro views, watch-alongs, just anything and everything that you can think of. So yeah, I can't say anything other than just saying go check us all out. Okay, so that's our plug done. Let's get on with the show. So as I said, on our social media, we've been going for quite a few months now. This is the first show that we've been doing together actually to put out. But on our trailer, we've posted that we will be covering the last month or so for Impact and AEW, as well as sharing interviews on our social media. We'll do a bit of fantasy booking. We'll talk about what we'd like to see in the future, what's happened, the ups and downs. But today is a bit of a bumper one because we've got quite a lot to go through since the partnership of Impact and AEW came together a number of months ago. So yeah, so how have you found everything going on regarding the crossover between the companies?
It's been a really exciting time for me as a long-time fan. It's difficult to be surprised and delighted sometimes by wrestling, but that's exactly what the two companies have done. With Tony Khan opening the forbidden door, as he calls it, it's opened up any number of possibilities. You know, you can talk about being like the event of the X-Men turning up in the kind of Marvel/Avengers universe. You know, you could talk about like that basically if you don't know the kind of significance of this. So it's been great, and it's been a long time since anything like this has been done on kind of national television. We came up with the idea for this show before this started happening, and it just played into it so brilliantly that we would discuss both shows while this crossover was happening. So yeah, it's been an absolutely brilliant time. We'll talk about it a lot during the show, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, well, as you said, we talked about this way beforehand. And what a good way, instead of having two separate shows, we can have just one show. And as I said, we go over what's happened in the last month. But as I said, with the first show being as it is, we've got quite a lot to go through. Obviously, we're not going to go through everything. We're going to talk about highlights or stuff that we found quite intriguing, get each other's opinions, and obviously, when we post this out, we'd also like your feedback and how you found it, whether you agree with us, whether you don't, whether you'd like certain things to have been changed, or just as we said at the very beginning, it's a community, so just get involved. It's a positive community, so we need to stress: don't be a dick. Everyone has a voice, but there's a way of doing it. So, obviously, I'm not saying that everyone has to be positive and you can't disagree with people, but no bullying, no, don't be like that, because we're not happy with stuff like that. So, with the underline going underneath it, let's start. So so the crossover's been going on for quite a few months now, and obviously we saw Kenny Omega on Impact. We've seen the Good Brothers come over to AEW. We've even seen the likes of Kenta come from New Japan over to AEW. We've seen the introduction of Juice Robinson and David Finlay from New Japan in Impact. Have you, obviously, there's a lot of wrestling going on. Have you caught anything regarding the Impact side of it? And if you have, what regarding the crossovers, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when obviously when this started happening, immediately people started to watch Tuesday nights to see what Kenny Omega and Don Callis would start doing, and from there everything kind of spiraled out from there. So we'll talk about later, but that fantastic moment where Callis was very clear it would be a Tuesday night that we'd find out what their intentions were after Winter is Coming rather than a Wednesday, and it all kind of started from there. We immediately started discussing it between ourselves, and then of course I did watch the following Impact, which was exactly the point, to get fans who don't normally watch it, to get them on board. I then watched the next pay-per-view, which I want to say was No Surrender or Sacrifice, and now I've forgotten it, whatever the name of the pay-per-view was, but it was great.
So at the very beginning of the crossover type thing, we had Slammiversary where the Good Brothers turned up.
Yes.
The first pay-per-view where Kenny Omega teamed with the Good Brothers was Hard to Kill.
Yes, that's the one.
And then, which was the first one, which was, I believe, back in February.
Yeah.
I may be wrong with Jack, and then obviously No Surrender was the one afterwards where they did the triple threat against Private Party and Sabin and Storm. But that was the Hard to Kill was the first time we actually saw the in-ring debut on a pay-per-view, obviously for Impact, of Kenny Omega. So as you said, it's something that people were a bit unsure of. People were very much, what does AEW gain out of it? Ultimately, to me personally, they don't need to gain anything out of it. It's almost like they're doing someone a favour. Now, I know that we could sit there and say, well, they're not bringing the figures, they're not bringing the viewers and everything like that. But if it was all about viewers and figures, then Impact would have finished ages ago. It isn't, because they're on a show that they're on a network that the network is happy with, and ultimately, there was a bit of a loo between the Anaheim and the AXS TV takeover. I didn't watch the Anaheim side of it. I've only started watching it since the last version it brought up. But every week, the wrestling and every pay-per-view, the quality of work that's coming out of Impact, you can't deny that it's some of the best that's coming out of there. The quality of work, the quality of the people that they've got in there, and I appreciate that they're not on a bigger scale, which is why they have like part-time contracts, or they have, as long as you can turn up on these certain shows, or we'll block record for for 6 months worth of wrestling content. That's fine. There's not a problem with that. If there was a problem, then Impact would have gone ages ago. But for me, I think the fact that Don Callis is part of Impact has helped a lot. I don't think if it weren't for Don Callis, I don't think we would get where we are now. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, Don Callis is a very smart man, as we've seen. He's got a lot of history with wrestling, to the point where I think he'd always been burnt out by it. So for him to bring his kind of A game back into the industry, and want something to challenge him, it must have been something special. And I knew he had that opportunity with Impact Wrestling. So, we've discussed before in the previous one that ironically the brand is quite hard to kill, actually. And it's been around for a long time through many different kind of iterations now. And the fact it's still going through the COVID era is testament to, the show, I think. So it's the show that keeps going, and so Callis' involvement in that cannot be understated, I think. And you know that he's behind a lot of this crossover, and it's the smartest thing they could have done during this period as well. So it's been really great for both brands. But like you said, particularly Impact, you can't help but feel that they're getting most out of this, even if their talent aren't necessarily getting the wins at the moment. Not that really should matter, but what they are getting is the eyes. And I've actually been really impressed by the production values of Impact. I really like how they film the backstage segments. I really like how they put together that kind of thing. So for me, that's been quite a highlight, really. But Callis is the man, and he's had a lot to say about this.
Well, as you said, I mean the way that they've been doing backstage, the way that they've produced the shows on a weekly basis, same with what basically AEW and Impact have both been doing it with the hard cam. As it's worked really well, and I think same as we'll talk about in AEW in a bit, it's something that I don't think that they've lost anything from it. They've been able to thrive off of it. Obviously, with your block taping, it's better because you can tweak anything that goes wrong, or you can, if you don't think it looks right, you can change it. It's all that type of thing. And I also think that the introduction of D'Lo Brown and Matt Striker as a commentary team coming in is fantastic. I mean, Matt Striker alone, a lot of people don't like him. A lot of people don't like his style, but the knowledge he has is fantastic. And D'Lo Brown as a wrestler, I mean, don't get me wrong, they both wrestled, but D'Lo Brown as a wrestler to come and give his thoughts from a wrestling side, from a wrestler's point of view, than a commentator's point of view, is very, very good at working well together between them both, because you get that different contrasting in commentators, but you don't have the butting of heads. They gel really well because they know from the same background, they know how it works. And obviously Matt Striker's helping D'Lo Brown with a commentary, even though I don't think he needs it. But I just think it gels really, really well. So what I'd like to do from going back over since the whole merger and everything like that, even beforehand, is look at a few key areas regarding certain people, certain factions in Impact. So first of all, I'm going to start with the women's division. We've had the introduction of Jazz, the legend that is Jazz. Obviously, people will know her from her WWE days, WWF days, and she came back last year as a guest surprise partner for Jordynne Grace. And obviously Jordynne Grace and Jazz have formed a partnership. They also battled each other at Genesis when they didn't continue to go through the tournament to be crowned the first ever, or shall I say, the revived Knockouts Tag Team Champions. And they had a blow-off match, which was basically this is what we want to do. And I thought basically, I thought that match was fantastic. But mainly, it's Deonna Purrazzo who I want to talk about. She's made, pardon the pun, she's made a fantastic impact since coming into the Impact Zone, and she has aligned herself with Kimberly and now the former Sue Young, who is Susan, which is a completely different contrast from what you were expecting. But she's just been immense and fantastic
Yeah.
as a champion. She faced. She doesn't back down from anyone, even though when you look at the product, it looks like she's hiding behind people. But she's more than the way that she's presented. She's more than happy to fight anyone. I mean, going over some of the matches she's done, she faced ODB at Sacrifice, which was a fantastic match. She retained the title against Talia Valkyrie at Hard to Kill. She won the belt from Sue Young at Turning Point. It's just the stuff that they're doing with her at the moment is just fantastic, and it's only going to get better.
So how long? Sorry to interrupt. How long has she been champion now? Then.
Oh, so
when was that? When was Turning Point?
Turning Point would have been. Now you've got me there.
Sorry.
Point, I believe. I do apologise about this. Turning Point was, I believe, December.
Okay.
In that, but she's been champion for quite a number of months.
About 6 months then, yeah, about the time. Well, we'll be coming up on that, yeah, in the summertime, and I imagine she'll keep it probably until then and beyond. So,
yeah. So, from somebody who's come from WWE, unfortunately, we can besmirch and we can pull down the walls of other companies and that. But have you seen much of Deonna Purrazzo in any company, whether it be WWE or in Impact?
No, truthfully, I didn't even know she was in WWE. Was it NXT she was in then?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that. To be fair, but I haven't.
Put in November.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah, so she's had it for quite some time then. Yeah, already. We were just chatting the other day about how young she is, and she's shouldering quite a lot on her shoulders at the moment, and she's taken it all on. She's got the look, she's got the youth behind her, let's say. Great name, great look, and to be honest, yeah, I've seen her at Hard to Kill, and very impressive. She really can carry that company forward, and we've kind of seen, haven't we, like you said, with the tag titles that were reintroduced. There's a bit of a renaissance almost, and I've said this before, but the knockouts division, in TNA as it used to be used, was nearly always a highlight. Gail Kim and ODB, Madison Rain, the beautiful people. There was Maria Kellis. There was a lot of talent there, and that was nearly always the strongest point for a lot of that show, I think. So it's kind of carrying that on, isn't it? It's looking at that legacy and moving it forward, which is not an easy job to do. And again, I keep going back to her age and think you're not very old at all, and you're doing very well. So I don't know. Like, will she? I'd like to see her, I suppose, stay there, as we all would, because we can get onto this later. But there's talk, like Ethan Page have, of some talent moving from Impact to AEW, but that would almost feel a backstep. At the moment, I think, not for the talent, but for what they're trying to do. I don't really want to see that right now. I want to see a mentality of us versus them, not these guys are coming over, and joining us, because I think ultimately that's going to upset Impact fans, isn't it? If we start seeing too much talent jump ship right now, So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, Donna, very good. Yeah, very.
She was in NXT. She faced Asuka on an episode of Raw in December 2019. So she's got, if you want to call it pedigree, it's not as if she's just come from the performance center and then they've gone, we don't have anything for you, and she's gone away. She's very, 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 very talented indeed. And the only downside I have is if you've got as entire roster of Impact is that more people will start having eyes on you.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing, I mean, it's something that we could talk about in another episode. The one thing I will bring up is Jordan Grace has openly said that her Impact contract runs out in May, and she hasn't said whether she's staying, but she hasn't said whether she's going. It's one of those, we'll find out when it happens. Hopefully she doesn't, because I think she's an incredible wrestler, and I think she's done very, very well, especially when she's been facing Deonna for the title with their battles and stuff like that. So I think we'll have to wait and see. My other one I would say is I'm enjoying the reformation of Decay, which is obviously Rosemary, Crazy Steve, and then the introduction of Taurus.
Yes.
He's new to me. I'll hold my hand up. I try and watch anything and everything from every part of the globe, but Taurus is something that's new to us in the UK. But I'm loving it. We've talked about on a previous episode for the Turnbuckle Arms about Crazy Steve being blind, which is nuts. The fact that he's been doing it for such a long time, and the way that he works in the ring, and the way he described how he works in the ring, and the fact that he can have so many fantastic matches. And when I brought this up to you, you even said, "Is he?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm loving what Rose, as I said, as a faction, I'm loving what they're doing. You know, they've had a few matches on the pre-show, the BTI show, which is before the Impact, where Decay faced Triple XL, they faced Retro Scum, sorry, not Retro Scum, Reno Scum, and they're all free matches on YouTube. So go check them out if you've never heard of Decay, or even if you have. Obviously, it evolved from Abyss and stuff like that from years ago. But I'm loving what they're doing, and the development that and the freedom that they're having to have a bit of a laugh and a joke with. As I said, Rosemary. She's fantastic as a women's wrestler on the women's division. You've got Crazy Steve, who's had some fantastic triple threat matches on Impact. I can't praise him more than what he has. I mean, he's faced the likes of Blake Christian, who's now gone to NXT, Ace Austin, who's now the X Division champion. And as I said, it's the quality of work that he does, and the quality of work that Decay do, especially with Taurus now as their bull, as their Taurus. He's fantastic, and I hope it carries on, because clearly they're having fun, and clearly Impact are happy with them. That they have that little bit of a play behindhand. And then we move on to the Good Brothers. So obviously we know them from the Bullet Club in New Japan. We know them from WWE. They've turned up on AEW, and obviously they're signed with Impact. How have you found, or how do you think that the Impact have benefited them, if have? What are your thoughts on the Good Brothers in Impact?
The Good Brothers, everyone loves them, don't they? They are endlessly entertaining. I'm a big fan of Talking Shop, their podcast, actually. Rocky Romero from New Japan. They've been everywhere. You know, they're New Japan, like you said, WWE, TNA, AEW now. You know, they finally have found like a home, I think, in a place that probably won't inhibit their work too much, you know, in their creative freedom. You can tell they're their own guys, and they've been around long enough to not really do well with scripts being handed over to them. And I know a lot of their WWE work they weren't particularly happy with. The main upside for those guys was getting to team with their good friend AJ Styles, you know, by the sounds of it. That was the major plus point. And they had a good run, but we all know that they weren't used like they should have been there, really. So to immediately kind of come back in Impact, which was a bit of a shock to me, because I think every man is still thought they'd be over to AEW, to be honest, initially. So, and they've ended up there in a way. But yeah, I've really enjoyed their presence. They are the perfect kind of every good champion needs their like heaters, don't they? The guys that will get beat up before them. You see it all the time. You had Team Angle do that as well, really famously. It happens all the time. You've got the champ, and then you've got the two guys in front of him, the edge heads. When Edge was champ, you had Curtis, and Zack Ryder. So but they're not. They're more than that. They're not just these people that get beat up. They're their own characters. They're very funny, especially on being the elite, and they are unique in so many ways because there's an honesty to them and their work that you can feel. But yeah, I'm really glad to see them kind of in AEW, but yeah, also benefit on Impact. They're really good, and I just want to see them do more work. You just know like they're a solid pair of hands, but they're going to have fun doing it, and you expect that when you're on screen. So yeah, this crossover, they are like the perfect element of that, I think, really, because who else was going to come in and back Omega, from this side? Sorry, from the Impact side. So yeah, it was great, and obviously it's led to a kind of Bullet Club reunion, which in itself has led to a war between the OG BCs in New Japan, the kind of fake Bullet Club with Omega and the Good Brothers, and then of course you've got the Elite as well, and that's on top of the kind of OC club that WWE had. So Bullet Club has spread far and wide, but the things that glue it together is Carl Anderson. He was the member of the original Bullet Club. He's the one, isn't he? So yeah, I think really, if anyone's got a claim to who is the kind of true OG of the BC right now, apart from Finn Balor, it's got to be Carl Anderson. So yeah, great to see him, and it's great to have that connection, in the past and all the good work they've done be highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they made their impact at Slammiversary, and then jumped straight in and faced the North, which obviously is Josh Alexander and Ethan Page, right, at Turning Point, and won the belts there and then.
Yeah.
I mean, the North, as they were called then, were a fantastic tag team that had held the belts for over, I think it was like 165 days or something like that. They took on everyone, and obviously they hadn't taken on the Good Brothers. Now, maybe in my eyes, the what's the word? The fact that they've been around longer, the knowledge, the way that they can work with anyone, the way that they know how to get past everyone and anyone, has made them be, in essence, top dogs at that point. And then they went on to have some fantastic matches. We had a no surrender match where they took on Sabin and Storm and AEW's Private Party. We had a fantastic Impact tag team match between Storm and Sabin. We saw them, as we talked earlier, Hard to Kill, where they teamed with AEW World Champion Kenny Omega to take on Rich Swann Moose and Chris Sabin. We've seen Anderson in fantastic tag singles competition against Rich Swann. He's then gone on to face like Sabin, and then obviously it's evolved into them facing the newest people on the block, and that was Finn Juice from New Japan, who turned up on Valentine's Day. With the vignette, and obviously Good Brothers weren't very happy with that, as we saw on TV. We had a few times where they teamed together. We hadn't, as I said, we've seen them team with each other against. Let's have a look. We saw them team against Reno Scum and Triple XL, which descended into them having a bit of a fight. And then we had a singles match between them both. And at Sacrifice, and Finn Juice took the belts off them, which a lot of people weren't expecting.
No.
Were you expecting that?
No. I think Kenta was probably still the biggest surprise for me to show up on AEW, but yeah, probably followed by Finn Juice. I remember quite excitedly telling you about it, actually, because because they didn't have a kind of direct connection with it. I don't think anyone had expected that. You arguably could have said that, Kenta could have made an appearance. It would make sense with Moxley and their title history, but I don't think Finn Juice would have been anyone's call. And it's great because suddenly, yeah, you had Private Party there, and you had Finjuice there, and the Good Brothers, and yeah, everyone very quickly realized now it wasn't just AEW and Impact anymore. It was very much New Japan. And yes, so far they've only arguably featured Finjuice and Kenta, but I think there's still room for more. And I think that made me feel great knowing that it wasn't just that one person. It seemed that they truly had opened it up to more. So yeah, fantastic to see that. And I know potentially it was a way to get the belts off Gallows and Anderson so they could focus on the AEW stuff. But they're a great team in themselves. It didn't feel like something that was undervalued or rushed at all. And they came in with just as much impact as Anderson and Gallows did, really. So yeah.
But did you expect them to win the belts?
No, not at all. And that's the point. If you can have that kind of shock value, then bring it on. I'm all for that. Yeah, I did not.
And then it went back over to New Japan with the belts.
Yeah.
For the New Japan Cup, where they, it was they held the belt with pride.
Yeah.
In the ring. When Finlay was facing Will Ospreay, it was fantastic to see an Impact belt being held up in Japan on a different company. Now, I know a lot of people in the past, it was very frowned upon to show belts on. It just shows you that as long as they're not taking focus away from their product, everyone is happy to work with everyone else because it's only going to benefit everyone, and especially with the New Japan strong USA side of it, which I can see being more involved with Impact and AEW than the actual Japanese side of it.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's all based in the same area. Now, obviously, we've got the pandemic going on, or the back end of it. So it's still restricting people to come over and do certain things. So I think having certain people come over from different companies is something that they have had to work with. And I think and I hope that we'll get to see more from all three companies in the future, but I don't think that they wanted to water it down straight away and just filter it a little bit at a time, because the last thing you want to do is take focus away from Impact and focus away from AEW and just talk about New Japan and talk about Impact. You don't want an invasion as such to happen, because then if you do that, then people will be saying very much, you'll have to carry on. You can't just stop it there and then, because what was the point of doing an invasion angle? Now, the way that they've done, as you said, the way that they've done Finjuice, the way that they've done the Good Brothers, the way that they've done Kenny Omega, from transferring all across each other, I think is very, very well done. Same with Private Party, just bringing him in a little bit. However, I would like to see, personally, from my point of view, if we are going to get a bit more of a cross promotion, I'd like to see a few more stars from AEW, a few more stars from New Japan. But at the moment, as we said, you don't want to take focus away from these stars that you've got on the books. So I think what they're doing is very, very careful and very, very well planned. But it'd be nice to see more than just Kenny Omega and Finjuice. And hopefully we'll get to see that later down the line if we get another show from Impact. Obviously, we've got 3 shows now from AEW, which we'll talk about in a bit. But for Impact, I think they're doing very, very well with what they've got. And I just want to finish off with Rich Swann. Now, obviously, Rich Swann beat Eric Young at Bound for Glory last year, end of last year, and has been a fighting champion. He's faced Tommy Dreamer. He's faced anyone and everyone in tag team competition. He was part of the main event at Hard to Kill. He's faced, as we said, he's faced Anderson. He's faced Moose. Tommy Dreamer. He's done very, very well for himself as a champion that has got that charisma. And again, as I said, I can't stress how fantastic that match at Sacrifice with Moose was, when Moose did the Spanish fly off the top rope turnbuckle. For somebody that size to do a Spanish fly and come off not injured, in my eyes, it was amazing. And then obviously, to my final point is, or my final thing to bring up is his epic feuds with Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know what's going on with Ken Shamrock. Obviously, he's been suspended and released. Now, whether that's something because they can't keep him there, whether that's a storyline, whether that's an actual thing, nothing's actually been said. So we may see Shamrock in the future. We might not, but as a wrestler and as a champion, I think Rich Swann has done very, very well to hold that belt. I'm not taking anything away from Eric Young because he's in incredible form, but I think just for 2021 and where we're going as a product and as a company, I think having it on him with what he can do and his flamboyance is very, very, very good for the belt and for the as I said, for the product. What are your thoughts on Rich Swann?
Yeah, obviously, I would have seen him before in like the cruiserweight division / 205 Live in WWE. That didn't end so well for him, unfortunately. He had some issues, and there was an arrest at the time, which led to him sadly having to leave WWE. But then he's done very well to come back from that, really, hasn't he? And he's very much someone who you could see he had so much talent, in that division, and you could see he had so much charisma. So I was really pleased when, having obviously not really kind of paid much attention to him for quite a few years, to see him, headlining almost. Yeah. So for me, that was like, oh, that's a really nice story to see him come back from that, because some people don't. He's very talented, he's very charismatic, and yeah, he's almost the perfect face, for the company. Really, he does represent something.
He reminds me of the Pope.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. Are you talking about Elijah Burke, the Pope, or?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, using his other name. Yeah, very much so. And he again was someone that they tried to rebuild some of the new ECW around him. Elijah Burke, and he could have been a big star. And you're right, he was very similar in so many ways. It even had a bit of, I don't want to say Xavier Woods about him, but you could see guys like this, they all had that charisma, and they just needed the right output for it, really, I think. So he's done very well. His match with Moose was very impressive. His stuff against Omega was great, and of course we've got a huge title versus title match coming up, and we have both discussed how we don't really see either one walking away with both belts. We think something will happen, and we can get into that. But yeah, obviously you don't really want to see him lose that title just yet, because he is very great, and clearly they've got a lot of faith in him. And again, he's showed them a lot. This is a very difficult time, I imagine, to be any champion, with no fans there, to get that reaction, to see, as a top guy, you're always under scrutiny to see how you're doing, and how fans react to you each week. So yeah, they've kept with him now for some time. So yeah, very impressed by Mr. Swann, I must say.
Well, as I said, that's my obviously we'll go into more of it on another time, but as a bumper point, I just wanted to pick out some highlights for what's been happening over the last few months. And we are now going to go through that ever lovely forbidden door. And cross over to AEW. So I'm going to hand over the reins to my co-host, Big Chocky T. Take it away, bud.
The forbidden door remains open always, Johnny. You know this. Well, before we do that, we've actually got a listener question, our first ever one, so I'm really pleased to have. And ironically, it's talking about Mr. Swann, which is great. I think I haven't just mentioned him. So hopefully I will play this now.
Hi guys, after Rich Swann, who would you consider a credible opponent for Kenny Omega?
Well, I'm not sure if you could hear that, but we can edit it in there later. But that was Serena from Northampton who asked,
thank you, Serena.
Swann,
thank you.
Yeah, good. After Rich Swann, who would be a credible opponent for Kenny Omega? So, Jolly, I'm going to pose that to you first, assuming he takes away his belt. He's in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment, Omega. They've got him in a lot of trios matches. You kind of know that he's ticking over for something bigger. Now, who do you see as the next credible challenger?
Right, so for what's going on at the moment, I can see a number of people. We've got you've got the likes of Moxley as normal. We've got Kingston, but I think the way that they've been building it and the way that it's been racking up the wins and the fan support, and hopefully it'll wait until we get a crowd in. Obviously, we've got May, which is Double or Nothing. Is Hangman Adam Page.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know the story of them being tag team champions, the split, the fallout of them both, and it's only right that them two face each other down the line. Now, depending on how long they leave it, I think the next feud for him would be Hangman. As I said, Hangman Adam Page, because Moxley could go on and do his own thing with the Good Brothers. Same with Kingston, but yeah, I think Adam Page would be a good shout. What about yourself?
Yeah, it's difficult to disagree with that, isn't it? Like, it's a slow build with Adam Page, and you know it's going to build into this, and it's brilliant. You know, he was soundly beaten in that eliminated tournament by Omega. It was a good match, but it was a clean finish too. You know, so there was no disputing that he had lost that. And Adam Page's story from the man who was put into the main event against Chris Jericho almost immediately to the man who's had to, you know, go through a lot of emotional turmoil to hopefully find his way back on top, lose some friends in the Elite, gain some new ones in the Dark Order, you know, and it's actually a really beautiful story. And, you know, it deals with his alcoholism, and it deals with what it's like. He calls himself an anxious millennial cowboy. And, you know, if you think about it, it's one of the most in-depth characters in wrestling. Here he is, he's the Hangman Adam Page, but he's still young, and he's still got his insecurities, and he still has his own issues. And if you really think about it, that's a great storyline. It's a great character, isn't it, to fully flesh out. You could argue he's one of the more developed characters in all of wrestling. Maybe someone like Jim Cornette might not like that, you know, but me personally, I like it, and I think it suits, you know, the modern day fan as well. We all have our concerns, we all have our worries, and I think it's a story a lot of us could relate to, you know, overcoming struggles like that. Yeah. So yeah, Hangman is the next, I wouldn't say he's the next challenger, but I do think he's the one that will knock him off. Basically, I think we'll have perhaps a few more challengers before that. I think, do you know what I mean? I think Omega's reign has got a lot of depth to it, but yeah, I do think he's the most credible to actually beat him for the title.
Yeah, I think you're right with that. I think he might not be the next person to actually challenge him straight away, even if it's after Double or Nothing. But I think it's them two as a story, especially as like Kenny Omega on his losing streak, building all the way slowly up to becoming champion again. And then as we talked about with Adam Page, falling from grace and getting that redemption build all the way back up, doing what he needed to do, lose people, cut himself off from him, and then obviously if you want to say he's aligned himself, or he's got a new group of friends with the Dark Order. I think both of them are a fantastic story to tell, and it's nice to see that they've carried it on and not just gone a different way after like 3-4 weeks or even a couple of months and gone, right, let's just do something different and just completely change the whole character. But yeah, I think if I would hope, or if we're gonna have someone to take the belt off, I think it would be Adam Page. As you said, it might not be his first challenger after Impact's Rebellion, but I do think he will be the next person to take the belt. Whether or not that'll be at Double or Nothing or after, I'm not sure.
Okay. We've got another question on email here from Dave from Kent. Hello, Dave, who says, what, and this is for you, Jolly, actually, directly, applying pressure, you know, what do you think about the surprise appearance of Ethan Page at Revolution, and potentially, you know, Impact's loss from that to go to almost a direct competitor there? You know, do you think that Impact didn't do enough with him? You know, what do you think's kind of soured that relationship, and why do you think he made that move?
Well, he's openly gone on record and said that he wasn't happy with the direction that Impact was using him and the way that he was working with Impact, which is a shame because he's a phenomenal athlete. He's incredible. I mean, as I said, just look at his matches with Josh Alexander as the North Tag Team. They were fantastic. As his singles competitor, I think, unfortunately, I've got to say that's one thing that they did drop the ball on. Clearly, he wasn't happy with them. they wanted him to do a certain thing. He didn't want to do it. Obviously, as we saw with the karate, Mortal Kombat style thing, which apparently isn't the way that he wanted it to be done. He'd left beforehand, and apparently they butchered it afterwards, which he wasn't happy with, which just cemented the reason why it's a good thing for him to have gone. I think him going to AEW is a credit to AEW. Is again, it's the amount of talent that's on AEW. It's incredible. It's just, I think that once the pandemic goes, all the non-signed stars will start to disappear. We won't get as many as we do on both dark shows. We'll only get to see them every so often. But I do think that what AEW are doing, showcasing non-signed stars, is good. But going back to him, I think it's a good thing. I think it was a really, really good way of bringing him in and not announcing it. I think turning up on pay-per-view was very, very good. Obviously, you had the Christian Cage. Everyone almost knew that it was going to be him, but to have Ethan turn up on a pay-per-view where nobody knew was very, very good. And I just hope that he gets the freedom and the respect and be able to develop as a character, as a person on that show. I hope that he's given that ability to do so. So I think it's a credit to AEW. They've got a fantastic wrestler there, so good on him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right. He has been quite open in saying, how he felt about the Karate Man stuff, which is a shame for him. But yeah, to come in like that in a ladder match straight away, you're in there with Cody, you're in there with Scorpio Sky, Lance Archer. It was quite the debut and quite the impression, to be fair. And then since then, he's clearly taking those heelish routes and having a lot of fun with it. I think they know what to do with his character. And you're right, perhaps he's happier being a singles wrestler. I know he enjoys the spotlight on him, so maybe that's where he'll thrive. Okay, so like you, I'm going to do a bit of a recap. It's going to be a little bit longer because, this is going back about a 4-month period now. So we're going to go all the way back. Cast your mind back, Jolly. Way back now to December of 2020 with Winter is Coming. Put those effects in afterwards. So we're going to start with Winter is Coming and then leading all the way to St. Patrick's Day Slam, but by way of New Year's Smash, Beats Break, and Revolution as well, which we just mentioned. So back to Winter is Coming. It was a special episode of Dynamite, and we all knew it was going to be something special, really. It had a lot of hype. We all knew the title match between Moxley and Omega would be good, and it did deliver. Not quite as much as I wanted it to. But what happened afterwards has already been covered. But that was the special thing there. But what also happened on that night was the return of the Icon, adopts Tony Schiavone's voice. It's Sting! And Sting coming back was a great moment. I was never the biggest WCW fan, but of course I knew who Sting was and what he meant to a lot of people. So to see him return to AEW at his age after we all thought his career was probably done during his run with WWE was great. It was a great moment, and immediately have him yes, we all thought he was going to go into a program with Cody, but it didn't take him very long to draw the focus away from Cody and up to the rafters to see a younger version of himself in Darby Allin. There's immediate comparisons with the face paint, the loner status, the kind of, skulking around, the way he would deal out kind of justice to the injustice. And it was a great moment there. So comparisons aside, it was hard to say straight away whether they were going to go into a feud or tag, which ultimately they did form quite a nice team. So we have to talk though very quickly again about Mox and Omega and the involvement of Don Callis, the way the finish unfolded. And yes, you could argue a microphone shot is never that effective in my mind. I don't know what you think about that, but I never think a microphone to the head looks that deadly. But
neither's the Hulk Hogan leg drop. Neither's some of the finishes that people have, the DDT, some of these moves that they oversell.
Yes.
And then they sit there and complain that a mic shot is not the hardest thing in the world. It's like, well, no, it ain't, but it's wrestling. Get over it. Just enjoy the wrestling. Stop analysing everything. If you're going to analyse everything, then there's no point in watching wrestling because you'll lose all enjoyment in it. Just take it as it is. It's a TV show every week and just enjoy.
Absolutely, I couldn't have said that better myself. And I suppose he couldn't have brought in any other foreign object without it seeing. The point was to make Callis seem innocent, wasn't it? And the mic was innocently dropped. You couldn't have done that with a chair or anything like that without. So for that, it did well. Followed up by some repeated vicious-looking V triggers, and Moxley's very long and pretty successful reign as champ was over. Maybe people had seen that coming, but what they didn't see coming was the quick exit out to the car park, where again, my probably favourite moment of the last 6 months or so, where it was revealed that Callis had been planning this for some time, and you were going to find out all about it on Tuesdays on Impact. So,
are you sure it's Tuesdays? as we found out, as it said, yes, Tuesday on Impact. Huh? I just thought it was fantastic.
My genuine reaction was, oh, poor Don, he's messed up. He meant to say Wednesday. I honestly thought that, and I was like, he got me, Callis. So, me and Alex Marvis were left confused but excited. And it was favorite bit of the year. It gave me goosebumps, and you knew from that moment something big was going to happen, and it did. So with that, they brought back the heel version of Kenny Omega, the cleaner, and again that had been built very subtly, with Adam Page and the Young Bucks. He knew that change had to happen to make him be who he had to be. There was a lot of people complaining that Kenny hadn't been at the top of the card for long enough, but he's smart enough to know that could have waited, and he was also smart enough to know that they needed that time to elevate some other stars as well. So people would have been unhappy either way, right, I suppose, but here we are. So moving on from that, and we will, we have talked about what that meant later on, but to cover AEW for now, moving on to New Year's Smash Night 1 and Night 2, which seems to be the trend these days to do a kind of 2-night event, but I'm covering both nights here. So I want to talk a little about Shida as the women's champ. She fought Abandon or Abaddon. It was a good story. It was the story of just a woman fighting the unstoppable monster in Abandon or Abaddon. It was a solid story. It's a shame that it didn't go longer, really. The Shida problem, as I'm going to call it, I'll get into later. And it's not so much with her; it's how you book a face champ, I think. But that was strong. The title match that happened, I think on, I want to say night 2, between Darby Allin and Brian Cage, the Machine Brian Cage, was actually really great. Darby is a great opponent, and he's very good at fighting a variety of different sizes and skills. But I think you get the best out of him as an underdog when he's fighting up against someone, of that stature, Brian Cage. It's a natural story, isn't it? So they came up with a good finish.
Sorry, two completely contrasting styles of wrestling that works so well. Brian Cage, obviously, sorry to take it away, even when he were in Impact, when he was fighting Sami Callihan and stuff like that, and Penta, and as I said, you've got Darby Allin, who you think is just going to get his head kicked in, the Marco Stunt, the Jungle Boy style type of thing. But the fact that his attitude and the way that he comes across is, give me everything, I'll take everything, and I ain't going to stay down. To go against somebody like Brian Cage and the way it's portrayed is just, it was just a fantastic match. And on paper, Darby Allin shouldn't have won. But the way that he worked with Cage and the way that Cage worked with him was it just worked really well. There was not a bad match on either night of those. It was a solid card, and that especially was a really solid match, especially for the new TNT, obviously at that point a new TNT champion. So yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No, it was really good. Darby has been one of the stars they've focused on, and with good reason. They know what they've got with him. He has got a different look and a different appeal, but it's a very believable character in so many ways, because his slight stature, and you know that he's been through a lot in his life. He's had some hard times. You can tell by looking at some of the skateboarding he does. Like, he can take a knock, he can keep a licking and keep on ticking. So it all, that's real. When he says he's relentless, those beatings, he can take it. And let's not forget, I don't know what you thought about when he was I think it was a Double or Nothing, where he was powerbombed in the body bag onto the apron from the inside out. Now that looked incredibly vicious. You don't know where you are in terms of landing, and he just took that. And I mean, I'll ask you, real quick, but we've seen some of the bumps Darby takes. Like, do you think he's perhaps a little too reckless for some of the stuff he's done so far?
It's almost as if his nerve endings have been burnt out. I mean, look at the match he had with Joey Janela and
British.
Yes.
How could we forget?
Yeah, and he basically did that Cracker Barrel match.
Yes. Yeah.
And he would, and he took that. Yeah. And he just took that, all the bumps from there. I mean, I've never seen him wrestle until he came into AEW.
Yeah.
Even when he was on Ring of Honor's show, when they did the first one in obviously collaboration. I've never seen him before, and straight away I thought this looks like a revived new generation of Sting.
Yeah.
Going back to your Sting thing, you can see Sting seeing him in there, and he was the one person that I thought, if anyone's going to go join with him, it would be Sting.
Yeah.
There's so much similarity, not taking any crap from anyone. And I think he's doing it because he's not feeling it at the moment. Now, whether obviously taking the bumps, if he's got a high level of high threshold of pain, then at Jimmy Havoc, that was the person.
Yes,
that was it. Sorry. If he's got a high threshold of pain, then that's fine. But then there'll be a point where it will all start coming round on him, and I just hope that there's somebody, even if it's Sting, or anyone backstage, is like, do this, that's the other, but either tone it down or don't do it as much every week to make sure your body don't crumble, because the last thing you want to be doing is 30 and he's having to retire or having to do a producer role because he can no longer do it, because he's not just wrestling, he's doing his high dives, he's doing his coffin drops. I mean, it's also very good for when he's doing the coffin drops onto people that they're catching him. He's not hitting the floor as hard as other people have when they've been missed. So I think as long as he works the way he's doing and the way he is wrestling with others, I think he'll be okay if he carries on. But as we've always seen, and as we know by watching numerous amount of wrestling over the years, there's always going to be that one time where something goes wrong, and I hope it doesn't happen to him. Now, I'm not saying I don't want it to happen to him when he's older. I just don't want it to happen to him while he's young and he's got a thriving career. God forbid that happens, because we've seen that we've happened to other people with a thriving career, like Owen Hart, and people having to step away. Even I know it sounds daft, even Edge at the time and stuff like that. But
Page,
hopefully he takes care of himself. But I can see he's only ever going to flourish, and he's only ever going to get better. He can't get any worse, because there is nothing bad about him. He's a high flyer that has got no issues at all with putting his body on the line. And I'll give credit where credit's due. But as long as he looks after himself, it'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So also on the same night, we saw Phoenix versus Omega after Penta was ruled out to injury. I just wanted to very quickly, in each of these recaps, I'm going to mention perhaps one talent like Darby or Phoenix in this case. He is incredible. And if you haven't seen Ray Phoenix, I suggest you just stop listening to this right now and go check him out, because he is incredible. And then come right back again and keep listening. But yeah, the rope walks he does, some of the early stuff in Dynamite I hadn't seen anyone do ever, and it was very impressive. You had the Lucha Brothers against SCU, and which was a stunning series of matches in my mind that just featured moves that I genuinely had never seen. I've made this point before that he is the Lucha Brothers they've been tweeners for some time. They've kind of played the role of face and heel. Mostly they've been heel, but just recently they've kind of gone back to the face side. Now, Pentator is an incredibly natural heel. But Phoenix, in my mind, is an incredibly natural face. If you're going to be that talented, and you can't be booed when you're doing these incredible moves, can you? And this is always the Lucha problem, I think, isn't it? If you're that spectacular, it's quite hard for people to dislike you, which is exactly why MGF keeps his moveset grounded and realistic. Because he can do, he could do great stuff. But he knows that as a heel, you don't want to be doing stuff that's going to impress the crowd. You want to do stuff to piss off the crowd. So, on that point, really impressed by the Lucha Brothers. They've become some of my favourites, and the fact that they do this all with masks on, they still manage to win over these fans, without having too much promo time, and their actions speak for themselves. Going
on with the Lucha Brothers, they're packed. They had an incredible match with Ortiz and Santana, which again is free on the Impact Wrestling site, Impact's YouTube site. They had an immense run in Impact, and had the privilege of seeing them both face off against each other in the UK for a company called What Culture Pro Wrestling, then changed to Defiant, and they did a world tournament, and they brought over them, and you had Penta facing his brother Phoenix, which was the first time I'd ever seen him, and I just thought these two were incredible, and as you said, the stuff that they've been doing with the Young Bucks, and the fact that each week you can't tell, especially with Penta, you can't tell he was a heel with Cody, and then on last week's episode of Dynamite, he's a face. Now for me, for a normal wrestling fan, you'd sit there and go, "This is doing my nutting," because I don't know what I'm supposed to be. But for him and for Phoenix, it doesn't bother me.
No,
because the quality of work that they do in the ring is all I care about, especially from them two. Yeah. As I said, the trios match that they've just had was just phenomenal, and as you said, with the tournament with to face Omega at the end, it was a shame that they had to replace each other. But I thought them two. If you see them face each other and you sit there and go, wow, you can understand why they are one of the best, if not the best, tag teams in the world, because they can produce that amount of quality of good work as singles competitors, then it's only going to get dialed up to 10, if not 11, as a tag team. And especially now, they've realigned themselves with Pac for the Death Triangle. It's just immense. So it was them two as wrestlers are fantastic. Yeah, absolutely agree.
I agree with that. It is surprising they haven't become the champs yet. You could have argued that SCU winning it were a bit of a shock, actually. The original tag champs themselves. I would have said, Lucha Brothers would have been my pick, because they really are spectacular. And the Escalada del Muerte ladder match they had with the Young Bucks was just out of this world. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. I don't want to dwell on how great they are, but
to be honest, for me, they are that same with, like, I know they've done it with the Young Bucks, but they are that type of tag team that don't need the belt, because in a way, I don't want them. If they have the belt, I don't want them to lose it.
That's a good point. Yeah,
that's my 8-year-old inside me. I don't want to lose it. But they are at a point, for the incredible work that they do, that they don't need a belt to say how good they are. People who watch AEW will know who they are. It's not like watching other companies where it's like, oh, who are these? You purely the indie wrestlers, the indie fans will watch AEW because it's more of an indie show, because of the amount of talent that's on there. And I think, as I said, I think that's what is good about AEW is the fact that you've got so much good talent that not everyone needs to challenge for the belt. It's nice to have the belt because it means, in essence, on paper, you're the best.
Yeah.
But they don't have to have the belt to prove that they are the best because the people that are watching the product know just how good they are.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. You're right. They are that talented. They generally don't need those belts on them. And we've now got Neville and Phoenix to be challenging the Young Bucks, funny enough, for the title. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't see them losing that. But yeah, I'm just really pleased to see the kind of Death Triangle reunited. But I think they've just, as you mentioned with the heel face dynamics, I think they've got a bit of an issue with they don't quite know where to put all three of them together, with arguably Neville. He ain't no face. Do you know what I mean? He's the best heel around, really, apart from arguably MJF. So yeah, but then you combine with natural baby face Ray Phoenix. So I think they've just got a bit of a problem knowing where to sit. But like you said, does it matter when you start seeing these rope walks, and these tope suicidas? Does it matter? Not really. Your eyes are drawn to what they're doing and not what they're saying or acting, I suppose. So moving on to Beach Break. So I appreciate a themed show. It was a bit of a reference back to WCW Bash at the Beach, which I think it was called the year before, and then they changed to Beach Break this year. It was more of a show that continued feuds rather than ignite new ones. You did see the rivalry of the long-standing rivalry of Britt Baker and our favourite Thunder Rosa carry on through this, and it also carried on the momentum of Omega and Moxley with a huge six-man tag, which featured Pac, Phoenix, and Mox, which was a very unique teaming against the Good Brothers and Omega. And we've seen, variations of this match now quite a bit. Omega and the Good Brothers versus various combinations of three. And that's been used, I think, to kind of hold Omega. So I want to talk more about what happened after that match. A man whose face was partially covered, ran into the ring and hit Moxley with a move a lot of people will know as the GTS. The originator of the GTS, of course, is Kenta. And who else was going to be behind the mask but Kenta? So I lost my proverbial shit at this point. It was 3 a.m. in the morning and I sent out a very excited tweet. Apologies for the spoilers at the time.
I remember waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and seeing that you'd sent a message at like literally 2 hours earlier saying, oh my God. And do you know what? I know a lot of people sit there and go, oh, you spoiled it and this, that and the other. At the end of the day, if you don't want to be, and this is my old man speaking now, if you don't want to have spoilers or anything like that, turn your phone off.
Yeah.
I'm really, really sorry. In a world of social media where anyone is going to, it's the equivalent, it's me ringing you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and going, this has just happened. And you going, what?
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody out there that you're going to spoil it for somebody. But at the end of the day, that is life. And then, unfortunately, the 8-year-old inside you went, I need to share this.
Exactly, yeah.
And unfortunately, you're always going to upset, as I said, you're going to upset one. But in the world where we live in, where there's social media is at our fingertips, if you don't want to know what's going on, and this is a big point to anyone getting into wrestling or watching wrestling, because unfortunately in the UK we get it at a different time as people in America, people in Japan, people in South America, people in Canada and all that. A lot of us who are over the age of 17, 18 will know if you don't want to know it, you turn your phone off or turn notifications off, or even just post saying, do not tell me what's going to go on tonight, because we speak, because that is what we do. We're a community where we talk. And as you said, yes, you were excited. Yes, you posted it. Maybe you shouldn't have, but only if you didn't post it, they'd see it from other dirt sheets.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get away from it. So from one friend to another, from one good friend to another, it doesn't bother me at all. Spoilers do not bother me unless I say I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Like the Undertaker streak ending and stuff like that. That is something I don't want to know.
No.
But the fact that we didn't even know that Kent was even going to... There wasn't even any talk of it.
No.
That is why you lost your proverbial... So I can understand why you wanted to share it and just go...
Understandable, yeah. It was, like we said, with various restrictions. The match between, I'll give you the backstory. Kenta held the briefcase, which allowed him to challenge for the IWGP US title anytime. It was very much the equivalent of the Money in the Bank briefcase. And John Moxley had long been the US champion, having won it back from Lance Archer, originally being Juice Robinson, and I thought it was a bit of a full circle moment, by way of Lance Archer. Yeah, I was going to say, but what we had in that night was the appearance of Kenta, and we knew from that point the forbidden door was truly open, because this was the first presentation of a New Japan talent on AEW, and so it does tie in with, as you said, New Japan Strong, the more US-based version of that, which makes a lot of sense. But it tied together the two storylines, the rivalry that these two had, and the ultimate battle they would have for the US Championship. But ultimately, it allowed a bigger storyline of the possible formation of, or reformation of the Bullet Club, you see, with Kenny temporarily teaming with Kenta. To go against Moxley and Archer, which was a great match, but it was brilliantly done because they didn't let Kenta become too friendly with Omega. It was quite standoffish, so it allowed that rivalry between the two Bullet Clubs, as it were, to carry on as well. So very well played. He's gone back. We haven't seen him back on AEW since, but again, it was the moment where we realized the potential for this crossover to have. So what we're going to move on to now is Revolution. So before I cover that, a lot of people have said this was one of the best pay-per-views that AEW have done. Arguably, Revolution 2020 was the best pay-per-view they've ever done. So first of all, Johnny, give us your thoughts on what you remember from Revolution 2020, and then we'll delve slightly into this one.
The infamous tag match between Kenny Omega and with Paige and the Young Bucks, which was named pretty much the best tag team match ever. I mean, I know it sounds awful. That's the one thing that I can remember mostly. This is unprepared, so I do apologise to viewers and obviously audio viewers. I'm now wondering, oh God, do you have any highlights or card that you can remember from that show?
Yeah. You had Darby Allin versus Sammy Guerrero, which was fantastic. I just described it on the Wrestling with Jonas show as a video game where people were spamming their special moves almost. It was just spectacular. And about 5 minutes to go all out. You had the tag match, which was absolutely brilliant. I believe, I want to say you also had Cody versus MJF, I think, was from Revolution. I think.
I want to say yes.
Yes, that was a great match all in itself. This has all been covered, but the point is it had big shoots to fill. So Revolution 2021, it came in with a lot of hype. I was really excited about that. Just to cover some of the highlights you had, the amazing street fight, which was a cinematic style match between Team Taz members Brian Cage and my man Ricky Starks versus Sting and Darby Allin. Now, if you haven't seen this, I do recommend you go and check out, the 10 or 15 minutes that leads up to perhaps the main bulk of the action happening. Darby himself, he dropped out of film school, but what he did bring to this was a lot of that knowledge that he gained during that time. He produced a lot of the segments, and it shows a lot of Darby's kind of pre-match vignettes that he's done have been very great, very dark, very brooding, and that was the same here. To set the scene, we opened up on what looked like a downtown Californian rooftop. Ricky Starks enters by the fire exit, pulls into this massive looking supercar with the equally massive Brian Cage, and from there we're down to this undisclosed location. Sting drives in his pickup truck, Darby hitches a ride with his skateboard onto the back of it, and this is
just come Back to the Future.
It was. I thought I'd switched over, but it's a great match. I don't want to say too much about it. Go check it out, but that for me was a highlight, and AEW have done some particularly good, in my mind, cinematic style matches. But this one had...
I must admit, as regards cinematic matches, obviously we've had this, if you want to call it, the Stampede match, and then obviously if we look at different companies, and even if you look at Impact, you had the deletion match and stuff like that. I think what they did with this match was a lot of people will sit there and go, yeah, but it wasn't as good as this match, or it wasn't as good as this match. This delivered on what it needed to. It didn't need to go overboard. It didn't need to have all bells and whistles and fireworks and that. It needed to be broody. It was a Darby Allin Sting match, cinematic match.
Yes.
So it had to keep that aura. If you had all the glamour and the Marvel type of thing, then it would completely destroy the, as I said, the character and the tone of Sting from 90s all the way up to now, and Darby Allin from when he first walked in. You needed to keep it that, and I think the whole thing of keeping it on the rooftop and then in the disused warehouse and the way it was lit and everything like that just fit perfectly for what they needed. And yeah, I just thought as I said, my thing with it was, yeah, it was just perfect with how it needed to be. It didn't need to go overboard, and it didn't, and it did enough just to say, yeah, this is their match. This is their cinematic match. No one else can. If anyone else does something like that, they can say they've copied this instead of saying, "Oh well, they've copied." You know, Matt Hardy. They've copied these the Stadium Stampede match or and stuff like that. I just thought what they did there with that was perfect for them too as a unit and as a team, and Team Taz themselves worked really well with it, and it just everything delivered. And the only issue I have with it is it didn't carry on.
yeah, I agree. It wasn't.
I enjoyed it enough. I wanted more.
Yeah, I agree. You know, you had a lot of the build up, a lot of getting to that ring, you know, as it were, inside the warehouse. The match itself was great, but yeah, it could have gone on for a little bit longer. Which leads me on to the face of the Revolution ladder match. Now, one of my criticisms of AEWs, and there's not many, is the fact that I don't believe they've yet to have a really good ladder match. You know, we've seen the Casino Battle Royale style ones. We saw, you know, the ones where you had opportunities to gain title shots. Now, this was similar to grab a brass ring and then to take that challenge to the title holder, which would remain Darby Allin after Scorpio Sky's unsuccessful challenge. But Scorpio did win it. And Scorpio Sky I wanted to talk about because we all kind of knew that he would probably leave the nest of SCU sooner or later. But he's one of the first faces I remember seeing that I did recognize from other promotions, but also recognized as a future star. You know, he's very athletic, very charismatic, and now he's been given the opportunity to run with the ball. It means he's turned heel, but what they're doing with it is he keeps kind of claiming that he's not, you know, he's not turned at all. It's just now you're just noticing him, you know, and now this is what he's had to become, really. But yeah, you know, I wanted to know your thoughts about Scorpio Sky. What do you think they could do with him? You know, is he a potential future champion?
I think I've going back to some of the other stuff. I had the privilege of seeing him on a Ring of Honor show in Doncaster.
Yeah.
He was part of the Ring of Honor UK tour, and it was the first time I'd ever seen him as part of the SCU.
Yeah.
And he was fantastic there. All straight away, first time I'd seen him, I was like, this guy is fantastic. This guy's incredible. When are we going to see a belt on him? Obviously, in a way, tag belts and this, that, and the other. The fact that he's faced Chris Jericho, which was a fantastic match. I think I'd like to see him. The problem you've got is you've got too much talent that is good in AEW. I think, given the right story, which I think we're getting, as you said, we've got the start of the story, like the whole Adam Page, the whole Kenny Omega. I think building him to be a potential future TNT champion is there. It's just I would like to see him, if we look at where we are now and what we're going to get in the future. I would like to see him as a champion. I think he could carry the belt as a champion, especially with the whole gimmick, the whole way that he is now, as in, this is me all the time. I've basically been pretending.
Yes.
to fit in, and because you don't like what I actually am like,
Yes.
you're portraying me as a heel. I think that the way that that's coming across is very, very good. And if they carry on with it, and if they especially build with him fighting Kazarian and Daniels to properly establish himself away from the SCU group unit, and then feed himself way through, whether it be, he wins like the MJF ring, stuff like that, and give him different level. Don't push him straight away to knock him down, because then he will never be a credible threat. That's the problem that you've got with certain storylines and certain promotions, where they'll push people very quickly.
Yeah.
When they knock them down, they don't feel like a credible threat anymore. One person that I thought that they did off a bit of a tangent is Lance Archer.
Yeah.
That's somebody that I thought that they could have held back a bit. I think they're rebuilding him now, but they could have held back on him a bit, because him as a wrestler is an incredible wrestler. Again, same with Scorpio Sky, and I think they're doing it right with him now. And as long as they give him them little 2 on the nose with a brass ring, if they give them little nuggets of success, as in like accomplishments, he will then be a credible threat again to the TNT Championship, which is obviously what they're going to potentially be doing with Lance Archer and Darby Allin, because of the whole Sting, Jake the Snake Roberts type of angle and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think Scorpio Sky would be and will be a champion, as long as they keep the momentum going, but don't push him too quick that people almost don't feel that he's especially if he loses quite a few times, he will not be a credible threat, and then it'll be like, well, he's just a paper champion. I don't want anyone to be a paper champion. I want them to show that they've proved it, and show that they are capable of holding that belt. And there is enough talent in AEW that any one of those can hold that belt, especially Scorpio Sky. So yeah, I hope he's given the time he deserves to build his momentum and build his character to be a viable threat to any belt. If they include another belt in there, another singles belt. If they don't, then fair enough. But TNT, if not, depending on how far down the line the main AEW World Belt would be a very, very good thing for him to have. But they need to do a lot of work for him to be a viable threat to have that title. But as it is at the moment, I think he would be very, very good to hold the TNT title.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think by seeing him lose to Darby cleanly after Darby had gone to that street fight, it shows they're not ready to just jump on board with everyone straight away. The predictable thing would have been for Scorpio to win the Face of the Revolution ladder match, which he did, and then challenge a couple of days later and then win the title. So they didn't go with the expected there. But I think, like a slow build seemed to be a very common theme with some of these stars. You're right in saying there's so much talent. You could pick out a bunch of people that could be a potentially great TNT championship. Sammy Guevara for one, Jungle Boy for another. So yeah, I guess we build and we see who really kind of comes out the other side, because there is so much talent right now. It's hard to know what to do with them, I think. And so you mentioned Lance Archer, which is interesting. I was actually going to mention this about, I think with certain big men, I think they failed to, like you said, that they've kind of not wasted their chance, because they're still there and they're still credible. But I think they've had moments, especially with Archer, to let him shine. He probably should be the TNT champion for the way he's had several opportunities and several cracks. He had a crack at Moxley, and he lost that match, unfortunately. And it was the same with Brian Cage, who almost immediately came into it and had a title match against Moxley. And both of them lost that. So you've got to be careful, haven't you, like you said, to give these... It's okay to have a loss at a championship opportunity, but you can't keep giving them opportunities, and they can't keep losing them either. And I think Lance Archer, they're in danger of doing that. He came in very strong. I love his partnership with Jake the Snake Roberts. But yeah, we're getting to a point with Archer where I think he needs a big win now to solidify this. He's very popular with the fans, I think, and he's very credible. But yeah, we need to be careful. They need to be careful not to give him too many more chances and then not see him win something. I think he needs.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It builds the plus side of it is it builds Darby Allin
Yes.
as a fighting champion.
Yeah.
And obviously as we spoke before, where he faced John Silver in a fantastic match, and hopefully back in 4 to 6 weeks, as he's already said, and hopefully gets another match at that, because a championship title opportunity, because he clearly is an incredible, again, as we've just said, he's an incredible performer, is John Silver. It's just, I think the problem you've got is when you don't have a weight division, is that anyone can face anyone. So, for instance, you could have Kenny Omega face the TNT champion, and is Darby Allin going to win that? No. So, have we got to be careful with the people that challenge certain belts? I mean, you can have a pocket of people that all face each other, and then you have your TNT champion at the top of that. That's not a problem. That means all them people can face each other.
Yes.
Almost like a round robin style thing.
Yeah.
And then face the TNT champion. The same thing with Kenny Omega. You could either have certain members of the roster, like, for instance, you could even say Luchasaurus, you can have Moxley, you can have Cage, Jericho, you could have Kingston, and they all face Kenny Omega. And that's not an issue, is that? Because they're all fighting each other to build to something. The problem is for me, is if you've got a champion, that Kenny Omega is only going to face a certain amount of people for the belt, because certain people are not going to be a viable threat unless they have help. For instance, if Adam Page causes Kenny Omega to lose the belt, that type of thing. We've seen that before on other promotions. With the TNT Championship, with Darby Allin, he's got to face all these other people, which is fine. Now you've got a lot of people that are, if you want to call it, under 230, even 205 as a weight. But you've got to be careful, because if you include everyone else, like the Lance Archer, the Kingston, and everything like that, it makes it that they will challenge the TNT champion, but all these other people that in essence should be, I'm going to use a different company's name for it, the Cruiserweight Championship. You want to call the TNT for me is the equivalent of the the US. The Cruiserweight, because you've got all this talent underneath that are fighting for Darby Allin. All the people above, like, as I said, the Moxley and that, don't need the TNT Championship.
Yes, yeah.
They want, not that they don't need it, it's just that, apologies, my screen is frozen. So if you're looking at, if audio folk, you're fine. If you're looking at the YouTube, it looks like I'm trying to grab the screen. So I apologise for that. So hopefully
that's right.
But yeah, it's just that for me, I think they need to be careful with who they use in the TNT champion in the title race, because you don't want to not allow talent that can be a viable threat to Darby Allin to give that the build where, for instance, they face if he faces Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara. On paper, you don't know who's going to win that. And for me, if he's going to go against Moxley, unless something goes on outside, Moxley should win that. So for me, I always think that you've just got to be careful with what talent you have facing certain people. Like the Brian Cage should not be facing the TNT champion for me. For me, it builds Darby Allin, but it doesn't give Cage a credible threat towards the AEW champion then. He's going to face Kenny Omega, because you could look there and say, well, your storyline could sit there and say, well, you can even face Darby Allin, so why should I face you? And then that basically is that feud over. So, but yeah, it's a difficult one, but for me, as long as they do certain things with certain people with the championships. I think anyone can be the champion, as I said, as long as it's done well and it's not done as a one-sided type of match. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I'm going to move on to St. Patrick's Day Slam, where the clear standout was the unsanctioned lights match between Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and Thunder Rosa. Just incredible. It was a vicious kind of almost like well, where do you even start? They wanted to prove a point, didn't they? This was the first ever women's main event of Dynamite, but not only that, it was the first unsanctioned women's match on AEW. It got 4.75 out of 5, and I don't know how you feel about star ratings, but arguably it could have got 5 out of 5. It was spectacular. There was a lot of moments in there that will live in the memory. Now Britt, she knows the power of a bit of blood and what a powerful image that can be. We all remember Austin versus Hart with the double turn. There's been some flair with his bleached blonde hair like streaked with red. We all know how powerful some blood can be, and AEW don't shy away from it. She said on the podcast with Renee Paquette that she'd been learning like where the cameras were at any one point, so she knew from her experience with the previous match where this had happened to look for this camera. So unfortunately, even though it felt like an organic moment, it turned out it was at least on her part like kind of pre-planned, but it didn't take away from that dramatic look, which was very quickly turned into a very nice t-shirt that I wouldn't mind myself. So Rosa wins the match with, I think, a Death Valley driver essentially off through the table, I should say.
Yeah.
But Baker ultimately has come out of this perhaps as the star. There's been a lot of talk about, Baker talking how she's done this match and she was the star, but it plays into a heel very well. And she has got the spotlight. So that's got to, I think, rub Thunder Rosa maybe a little bit the wrong way in real life, but it also plays into their storyline, which is something Dr. Baker was very quick to pick up on, calling herself now a hardcore legend kind of overnight, mocking other kind of hardcore legends and knowing that she was the kind of star of the show now, comparing the 3 biggest letters, DMD to AEW, and kind of threatening Tony Khan to know what to do with her now. We could talk, and we have done, on the Turnbuckle Arms, about the resurgence of Dr. Baker as a heel character. And it has been it's been a pleasure to watch, her turnaround from, good wrestler, still learning kind of face, to like complete arrogant badass. And frankly, if you're going to be a dentist, you probably should be a heel. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to watch, and this was her crowning moment, really. So yeah, well done to both ladies. History has been made there, and it was a tremendous match to watch. Jolly, tell us your thoughts about the unsanctioned match.
Well, to be honest, I think the build from the very beginning all the way through to even after these unsanctioned matches has been one of the best things, one of the best rivalries to watch in wrestling for a number of years. I mean, a lot of people disagree and say, well, this, that, and the other, but I think what they've been doing with these two has been incredible. It didn't build up to this match. Sorry, it didn't build up to their first encounter. They've faced each other beforehand. He'd see Gus competition and tag team competition. I just thought the way that, like I've openly said to you before, that I wasn't the biggest fan of Britt Baker when I first saw her. Mm-hmm. And I'll gladly go on record now and say that what she's done in the ring from when I first saw her at AEW through to now has changed my opinion. I just think her in-ring work, her promos, the video packages and stuff like that, just the way that she talks to Tony Schiavone, it's just just how she acts to the crowd and to the camera is just amazing. And the fact that she's been able to continue this storyline with Thunder has been brilliant, and it deserved to be the main event. And I think, yes, you're right. Obviously, you can see it on the AEW channel on YouTube. Her promo the week after, where obviously, as you said, Mick, she said, "Oh, thanks, Mick, for giving that thumbs up. It took you 20 years to be a hardcore legend. I did it in one night."
Yeah.
You know, Thunder Rosa goes on about putting the women's division on the map. The fact that she's saying, she says to the crowd, "Is that all I get for an applause for what I put my body through?" As you said, the T-shirt. As soon as I saw the face, it was just reminded me of Stone Cold Austin with his Blood 316 T-shirt. And the fact that they brought it out as a T-shirt just shows you that it is money and it is an image that an iconic image for AEW that they should cement and keep. And as I said, and then the fact that she just carries on and states that, you know, Thunder Rosa might be the one that won, but everyone's still talking about Britt Baker. So clearly, you are not the woman who's put the division on the map. It's me, and I've been here from the start. And I, you know, and just how she is, and just the arrogance and the nastiness of the character is just actually really real. And the awful thing about it is it comes across naturally. And because it comes across naturally, it comes across better. It doesn't come across scripted. Obviously, we know about faces and heels. We know about scripts. We know about how that person isn't the way that person actually is, and this, that, and the other. But the way that she talks, it's almost as if it is real. Now, if it is real, then fair play to her. She doesn't give a crap. But if it's a storyline, she does it so well that it just comes off naturally, and I'm so happy that it's actually carrying on. I think there's a lot more gas in the tank for these two to face, whether it be in 2 months' time at Double or Nothing. You know, it could be one of those where they don't actually see each other for a little bit, and then it builds up to a match again. I hope it builds up and it's not just a blow off at a house show. Sorry, a show like next week on Dynamite. But I'm loving what they're doing with. To be honest, I'm loving what they're doing with the women's division anyway. A lot of people have poo-pooed it, but I think everyone's stepped up to show that, you know, we are good. You should keep watching us. And as I said, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa should be very proud, especially AEW should be very proud to have them two be in a match that they were able to carry just as good as Moxley and Omega. So
no, quite right. You know, and they were obviously very famously had their unsanctioned lights out match, which was spectacular. So you're right, it was a natural and kind of worthy follow-up to that, I think, and well done both of them. So I can see we're kind of running down the clock slightly here, so I'll move away from the recap and kind of give you what I think about the current state of AEW. I think feel free to jump in at any point, Charlie. Tag team wrestling is still very much a priority for AEW, which it should be, with the Young Bucks as two of the EVPs. You know, you would expect that. It's been great. I personally am a massive fan of tag team wrestling, so I'm really pleased to see it, you know, put very high on their list. You've got talent like Top Flight, Bear Country, and the Acclaimed, all very young tag teams that are making a claim to you know, their fame really, and try and grab their 15 minutes really in AEW. But it is a stacked division, too stacked. You know, we might have said previously, we've already covered some of the best tag teams. We talked about SCU, we talked about Lucha Brothers, you know, we have already mentioned Omega and Page. It is a massively huge division, so it's going to be a challenge, but this is where these additional shows come in, Dark and Elevation, to keep highlighting this young talent. On that, on the kind of numbers game, they've done well to split up some tag teams and some alliances. For example, the Elite or the Natural Nightmares, which we've recently imploded in spectacular fashion. But arguably now you've also got another sub-faction come out of that with QT and his kind of graduates from the Nightmare family. You've got Team Taz that seem to be possibly on the verge of losing Brian Cage, or maybe a swerve, you know. But now you've also got Matt Hardy's office. I can't even remember what it's calling it now. Originally it was the Empire, and I even pointed out how Will Ospreay had already taken the Empire name. I think he's calling it the Hardy office. I can't remember exactly. But that's now a stable. Death Triangle's almost been reunited. You had the short-lived Eddie Kingston family with Butcher and Blade as well as the Lucha Brothers. So it continues to be a bit of a problem, I think, with having so many stables and so many factions. We've also now, and how could we forget, we've got the Pinnacle, which is amazing because it's been a long time coming, and I would argue it was a swerve that not many people saw coming. There's been some great videos recapping how perhaps we could have seen this coming. There were several kind of clues standing out, but them itself, they're going to have a tremendous series of matches against the Inner Circle, and we might finally get the Blood and Guts match, which we never did get. I think originally it looked like it was going to be Inner Circle versus some other combination of talent. But do you want to talk very quickly about the Pinnacle? What you think about these guys, Charlie?
Well, just to let you know, the Matt Hardy thing is the HFO, the Hardy family office.
That's right.
Now, obviously, if you are watching or if you're listening on audio, that's brilliant. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sorry because I am still frozen in the same position, so I do apologise. So, so for me, the need to, for me, I have no problems with factions. Really, really don't. But they need to be careful with the amount that they've got.
Yes.
Because you can only put so much on TV at one time. They've got three shows that they could put stuff on, but they're already stacked 12 to 14 matches, showcasing people that aren't getting showed on Dynamite, as well as unsigned wrestlers. So I think that they need to just be careful, and if they are going to start going down the faction route, then use them sparingly. Don't showcase them every week. I mean, like we've had the obvious one is the Inner Circle being away for a week, which has been fine. It's been good to have that, but I think for me, I think the trios groups, I don't class. For me, I don't call them a faction. I think it's just like the SCU at the time, the Death Triangle, Lucha, the Jungle Express and stuff like that. I don't class them as a faction, whereas a lot of people say, well, if it's more than two, it is. So for me, the Pinnacle, the Inner Circle, the Matt Hardy family office and this, that, and the other, is good. I just worry that, like, especially with the Hardy office, I just worry that it's going to start being like the NWO. I don't want them to be on it all the time, because people will get... The problem you've got these days is people get bored very quick.
Yes, yeah.
And too much exposure can sour a product, and sometimes can sour how people view people. Now, I think on a completely different note, I'm going to completely discredit what I've just said there, as I'm loving, as I'll hold my hand up and say I love the Butcher and the Blade.
Yeah.
And I'm loving that I'm seeing more of it because they're aligned with the Hardys. The Matt Hardy and his the Empire, his office or whatever. By doing that, you're taking the TV screening away from people that aren't getting TV time. And as I said, we've talked about it. That's why they've got AEW Dark, the Dark Elevation, and then as soon as more shows start being able to be produced, the non-talent will maybe slightly go more away, and then the Dark and the two Dark shows will pretty much become a secondary Dynamite show, and not feel like it's we're getting people in just to cover the spots that we need. And again, with that, you've had the likes of Moxley and stuff like that being on Dark, which I think has been good. But I think for me, as long as they don't overdo it, or as long as they don't bring all the factions on every week, like as you said, like if we're going to go with a QT Marshall, if we go with the Pinnacle and that, and the Inner Circle, as long as they're not all in matches every week, I think we'll be all right. Like, for instance, if one week you've got the Inner Circles, Ortiz and Santana facing somebody, but then you've got FTR facing somebody. As long as they're not facing each other from each faction and they're staying away from each other, I think it'll be all right. And then, obviously, like you said, you could have a blow-off match at, down the line at like the house show that's coming up on Friday, or at Double or Nothing. It could build to that. We could keep them separate. There's nothing wrong with keeping them separate from each other on the same show and just feeding the vines of them both together. And I think that's, in my eyes, that would be the best way of doing it, because the last thing you want to be doing is having the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle just every week. It's a different tag team from the Pinnacle and different tag team from the Inner Circle facing the same faction for 4 or 5 weeks, because then when it comes to a big blow-off match, everyone will be like, well, I've already seen it, so I won't be invested now. But if you could possibly, if we lead, for instance, as I said, if we lead down to Double or Nothing, which is in 2 months, you could have like Jericho facing Sean Spears 1 week, and then a couple of weeks later you could have Sammy facing Wardlow, and just feed it in a little bit by that, and then have a massive blow off where you've got 5-on-5 at a Blood or Guts or a Double or Nothing match. I think that would be the good way. The same with the Matt Hardy family office, as long as they use them sparingly and don't have Private Party on 1 week, and then same with if they don't have Private Party and Butcher and the Blade on the same week, if they have it once every other week, you're using them in a way that you're not getting tired of them over a period of time. If that's what a lot of people got annoyed with the NWO, because obviously I know they called it an infection, and yes, it was lovely and everything like that, and I get that, but it got to a point where 99% of it was NWO. You only ever saw NWO versus somebody else. You very rarely saw Chris Jericho versus Eddie Guerrero, or very rarely saw Rey Mysterio versus Juventud Guerrero, because they all had to face NWO. And as long as they don't go the way that everyone has to face a faction each week, I think we'll be all right. As long as we work it well with storylines, and as long as they do it properly in a way that people don't get tired and feel like it's been forced down the throat, I think we'll be all right.
I agree. Yeah, it's what you have with a faction like the Pinnacle is the chance to what arguably Evolution did back in WWE, and I suppose the Undisputed Era. You have them go after the individual belts, don't you? You have FTR chase the tag titles. You could have perhaps Wardlow chase the TNT title on the Inner Circle side. You know what I mean? So you're right that you don't have to feature them all together. I would argue that it's a way of getting people on television every week and giving them that screen time. But you're also right in saying that if you see too much of them, you just ain't gonna care. So yeah, I'd like to see these talents go after their respective titles, and I'd like to see like the Pinnacle hold all the gold, for example. I think that's a good storyline. It makes sense, strength in numbers, doesn't it? You've got them helping each other out, but ultimately, I'm really hoping it leads to and Blood and Guts was very close to going ahead, and at the time we theorized that perhaps it would be a War Games style match, and obviously War Games being a WCW Dusty Rhodes product, you'd like to see that kind of come back to AEW at some point. And if not the Inner Circle, it's going to be the Pinnacle versus someone. So I'd like to see that. But I think you're right in saying that. So I wanted to talk about the women's division. We have briefly mentioned it. It feels like they are now hitting their stride. It has come under a lot of criticism over the last year or so. The women's tournament gave us a chance to look at some new global faces, and it gave Shida a worthy opponent, in the final, which also happened at Revolution, which was a really great match. But conversely, it also allowed Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker to carry on their rivalry. And that's what you need, isn't it? You need more than one storyline at any one time. You could argue now there's at least 3 kind of decent rivalries that are chugging along in the women's division, if you're going to count the Bunny and Ty Conte as well. And that rivalry between Rosa and Baker has powered this division. Arguably, it's led to the certainly most brutal match, as we've already discussed, with the lights out one, and it ultimately, I guess, leads to Baker dethroning Shida. You know, people have been calling it. I've called for it before. It seems the logical choice to see a on fire heel Baker, you know, go up against Shida ultimately. It seems logical, but having lost to Thunder Rosa as well in that big match, you know, it does make you wonder, yeah, perhaps that time's not coming just yet. You've got Serena Deeb on the scene, which must be a pleasure for the talent to work with her. She brings a lot of experience. And they've been unlucky to lose Anna Jay to injury more recently because, again, she felt, along with Ty, that they were two women that were kind of on the up and up and could also be incredible challengers. So they've had some kind of ups and downs in the women's divisions, but it now feels like that potentially they've got 3 or 4 challengers lined up, which brings me on to my Shida problem, as it were. And that's not even mentioned, by the way, Jade Cargill, who they are sensibly keeping away, I think, from the main kind of women's division rivalries, having her mix up with Red Velvet. Let's not forget she was in a match with Cody and Shaquille O'Neal. Huge pressure there on live television. But what you've got is a face champion, and it doesn't give a lot of room for creative finishes because if you think about it, Shida isn't going to cheat her way, is she, to win these matches? We've seen her beat Nyla Rose clean. And when you beat Nyla Rose clean, where do you go from there? You know, because she was a very credible challenger, which she's put down at Abaddon, as we mentioned, Anna Jay and Ryo Mizunami, most recent at Revolution. So just very quickly, Johnny, you know, do you kind of agree with what I'm saying, that as a face champion, your options are limited, aren't they, in terms of getting rematches out of that seem credible? Because once you've beaten someone clean, where do you take it from there?
No, I completely agree with everything you've just said there. They've had a hard time with criticism, and Shida as a champion. Yes, you are right. You can only do so much with a face champion.
Yeah.
Before you need to take that belt off of her, because otherwise, the other one is that you start to turn a heel. That's the if you're gonna keep the belt on her, you start to turn almost like as if she's cracking.
She gets desperate.
Yes, absolutely. The desperation's there. Like for instance, we'll look at Nyla Rose. If she was struggling to face Nyla Rose, she holds on to the rope, or she puts her foot on the rope just for leverage, and realize like we talked about with Scorpio Sky with Darby Allin. It's that I did that, but I needed to do that to beat her. To beat somebody clean anyway when you're champion is good because it means that you are a good champion. But where do you go from there? As you said, she's already beaten the majority of the people. Everyone that she's faced, she's beaten in succession cleanly.
Yeah.
So the only way you could do it now is to potentially take the belt off her without her being pinned. That way, like for instance, if it's a gauntlet match, or whether it's a 4-way match, or if it's a triple threat, anything like that. That way you still keep the Shida strong, but they've pinned the weaker of the 3.
Yeah, of course.
And then her way is, and then she can go do something else. She doesn't need the belt to continue to be, if you want to call it, the top of the division. She can go do something else. She can have a blow-off match where she loses by someone cheat. For instance, if she faces, let's say, for instance, she faces the Bunny.
Yeah.
The Bunny beats Ty Conti, and she becomes champion. So she gets a singles match against Bunny, and somebody, even if it's Butcher at Blade or whatever, distract her, and Bunny, like we saw on last week's episode of Dynamite, where she cracked Ty Conti at the back, and she wins, and that's it done. You can have that. She doesn't need to lose cleanly by a heel. She can have it. She can lose via some other way, which is obviously give somebody else the belt without her being pinned, and then as I said, and then in a rematch she could lose by someone cheating, and that way it still keeps her strong, and she can go do something else, even if she goes and faces, like, for instance, Britt Baker, or if she wants to face Deep, or even like when the borders open and we can get more people in, we can get she can face Rhea again, and we can get some of the other stars back in. She's okay not to have the belt, but if we are going to keep the belt on her, then we need, especially with her being beating Nyla Rose, I completely agree with. We need something to happen to her to change the dynamic of her with that belt, because in ultimately she can't be beaten now.
Yeah,
because she's beaten everyone cleanly.
Yeah.
So the only way you can beat her now is by somebody cheating. Now, the only way she can keep the belt, in my eyes, is if she becomes, as you've just said, which I completely agree on. I think it would be a fantastic way to go down that route of having a break and start realizing that, God, I can't beat these amount of people, or I'm having a 2-on-1, or I'm having a gauntlet match, or for me to win, I've actually got to do something I don't like doing, or she accidentally does something that she doesn't realize until somebody's pointed out and gone, "You did that," and she's gone, "Oh." But I like that because, I think it's a good idea to do.
So, yeah, I think you could have Baker be the one to point out that, and the hypocrisy. You could say, like, look at your champion. Look what she's doing to had to resort to. I'm the role model. I would never do that as your champion. And I think that works perfectly to lead up to that challenge, doesn't it? To see the increased desperation.
Yeah.
Not really have
with Britt Baker, you expect it from her because of that's how her character is.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't expect it from somebody like Shida or Deep or even like Thunder Rosa. You don't expect it from people like that, but for them to evolve that character, I think it'd be quite cool. I mean, she doesn't have to continue being like that.
No.
It's just she might need to have a slight change just to keep people invested in her.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up by saying about maybe one or two more positives that I've seen throughout the last 3 or 4 months. But maybe this goes back further to the creation of AEW. I want to talk about how little the titles have changed. We just talked about how Shida has kept the belt for so long. I believe now the TNT Championship has had the same amount of title changes as the heavyweight title and women. So I think they're 3 each, actually. So each of the single championships has now had 3 holders. Jericho, Moxley, and Omega for the heavyweight title. Cody, Brody Lee, and Darby for the TNT. And Riho, Nyla Rose briefly, and Shida. Now, the tag, you had SCU, Omega, Page, FTR, and the Young Bucks now. So that one has actually had 4 holders now. But yeah, I wanted to talk about, since May 25th, 2019, to only have 3 on average title changes over nearly 2 years is a great run. And I'm old school and I like long title runs. And I think the only exception to seeing the belt defended with the TNT Championship, it makes sense. It's almost the TV title that WCW used to have, and it would make sense to have that defended against everyone and anyone from any company as well, which is a whole lot of discussion. But yeah, in terms of the other 3 belts, the women's tag and heavyweight, I'd like to only really see them defended occasionally, and that's my kind of favorite champion, I think, really. So that leads on to kind of long-term storyline telling. We've already discussed it throughout this podcast and how good AEW are at doing this. You had MJF and Chris Jericho. We all knew something bad was going to happen. We all knew MJF was going to be the one to do it, but the way it actually came out was very different, I think. Page and the Elite and their saga, the Bucks and FTR, that actually went on for some time, and it was teased for some time. Omega and Mox, and even with Team Taz and Darby and Sting, and that's actually gone on for some time now. And they did well to kind of play that out for basically a mid-card feud, I'd said. So I just wanted to make a point about how they seem to have some long-term vision, AEW, and they're not playing hot potato just yet with the titles. And long may it continue. Now, like we said, that presents potentially a challenge, for them like Shida to keep having credible defenses. But I'm getting quite used to how infrequently, the title's getting changed, actually. So I just wanted to kind of finish on that and say, do you kind of agree that AEW seems to, even though it has changed some of its plans, they seem to have quite a good long-term idea, and I think a lot of that comes from the talent themselves driving some of these storylines, and like me, are you kind of happy with how little the titles have changed in AEW?
Yeah, to be honest, it's. I mean, fair play for remembering the who had the belts and this, that, and the other, because I actually have them saved on document to be posted on social media at a later point. But that's well done for remembering all them. Yeah, I'm enjoying the old school
Mm,
90s, 80s style of defending the belt. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got like on Impact and AEW, they'll defend the belt on a show, but they're not defending them every week. They're building to something. So, like for instance, you'd only ever get a belt title shot on a main event, like
yeah.
like at WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble, and you'd wait 3-4 months till you build up to that. I'm enjoying the lack of title changes,
Yeah.
because clearly you don't need to keep swapping the belts. You don't need to play hot potato,
Yeah.
and put it on somebody. I mean, um, I think putting it on FTR, my opinion, was the wrong move at the time,
Hmm.
because they needed to build that feud with Young Bucks a little bit longer, as we've talked about off air. It's been building for 7 years,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
and it was almost as if they needed to do it because they needed to do it before people got bored of it. And we're like, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm not going to be invested. So I can see both sides of the coin of that, and I understand why they did it. But it'd be quite nice to have seen it build out a little bit longer. And like you said, with the no crowd, it's just a shame that
Yeah.
certain things have happened with no crowd for them to actually have that atmosphere of 30,000 people cheering for FTR to turn up
Mm,
and take the belts, or Young Bucks. That no matter what you think about them, they have changed the business. They have done well for themselves. They have done well for tag team wrestling. They've done very well to have incredible matches to help build a division that they're very. You can clearly see certain members of the elite have their passion behind certain things. So, like the Young Bucks, the division is
yeah.
the tag team.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega is the women's side of it, and that.
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that you've got like the TNT title potentially could be weekly
Yeah.
a weekly title, which is in essence what it's Cody and Brody Lee made it. And as we've heard, Darby Allin a couple of weeks ago say he wanted to continue that
Mhm.
to honour Brody Lee, which I think as much as you can sit there and go, oh, well, that's it's been and gone. The fact that they've done that, I love them to bits to
Yeah.
honour it for somebody who was well loved and well
Yeah.
thought of, and I thought that's fantastic. The main belt by Kenny doesn't need to be defended every week, even if he wins every week, it doesn't need to be defended. You don't
No.
have to. You don't have to have the champion defending his belt every week. And I thought what he did against Matt Sydal was quite a good match, where it was,
Yeah.
if he gets beat, is it going to be a title match? So the whole point is, oh well, that means Matt Sydal's going to win,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
and he did. And it was just a curveball. And same with like the women's division, you've got such a fantastic group of women there now, that you don't need the champion. Well, you don't need any of the champions to be on there every week. You can bring them in every couple of weeks. I mean, the only reason we're seeing it at the moment where the champion is defending is because they're doing these specials for Dynamite, like a Bash at the Beach, and that
Yeah.
Beach Blaster, and the St Patrick's Slam. That's the only reason they're defending the belts, is because they're doing it as a special match. If it
Yeah.
was a matter of where they were doing a pay-per-view every month, we wouldn't have these specials on a weekly basis. We wouldn't have them defending the belts. We might not even see them. We might only see, like for instance, Kenny or Shida or the Young Bucks once every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But they're doing it because there's nothing they can do. They're restricted to what they can do. But yeah, I'm enjoying. I'm quite intrigued with if they're going to continue doing the route and the way that they've been doing it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they give, for instance, if Darby Allin loses the belt, will it end up being a hot potato type of thing, or will we see, for instance, let's say Pac wins the belt, will we see Pac continuing that tradition of every week, or will he decide that he'll only defend it when he wants to?
Yeah,
that way he keeps the belt longer. But yeah, from its birth of AEW, I like the fact that we've only had a maximum of 4 title changes. For, if not just 3, as you said, we've had what, 3 women, 4
tag ones,
4 tag, 3 TNT, and then obviously we've had Omega, Moxley, and Jericho.
Oh yeah.
And as I said, I think I like it. You don't need to have the championship defended every week. You can build it to something special that people are waiting for the big blow off match at Revolution or at All Out or All In and stuff like that. I think what they're doing is good, and in my opinion, I hope it continues like that, because I think it's something that people are not bored with.
Yeah, I agree. It makes the pay-per-views feel special, doesn't it? Not having so many. And I think eventually they'll go to probably more, but I don't want to see a pay-per-view every month, quite frankly. No. I don't even want to see one every 2 months. Having these title matches few and far between, it does build it up, and it does let that storyline grow, doesn't it? So yeah, I'm all for their slow thing. When an AEW pay-per-view comes around, so far I've bought all of them because they feel special, and because they feel unique. So yeah, long may it continue. There's no need to rush anything. Sure, that makes a lot of money. It's not the way.
If you do that's right. Even if you do 4 or 5 pay-per-views a year, and do every couple of months, you do that special 2-hour show that is tune into Dynamite. This is why you should tune in to Dynamite, instead of saying you should only tune into Revolution or you should only buy the pay-per-view. There's a reason why you want to be tuning into Dynamite, because it's to carry on that story to the pay-per-view carrying on. I think what they've done, with different promotions, I think what they've been doing, where they've been doing specials, is a good way of not being able to put on a pay-per-view. It doesn't feel like a pay-per-view because it's split into 2.
I agree with that.
Because obviously you don't want to burn out watching 5, 6, 7 hours of wrestling all in one go. And it's something to look forward to. Like as you said, Kenny Omega, somebody could win a gauntlet match, which obviously Matt Sydal beat Michael Nakazawa on Dynamite the night before, to then face Kenny Omega the week later on Dynamite. And I thought that was actually really, really good way of doing it. Instead of doing, you've won, you now face him later on in the show, or even it's just announced out of nowhere. I think what they're doing is good, and I hope that it carries on the way it is. If they are going to change anything, then what I would say is don't change too much, because the formula they've got with as an AEW brand and the product is perfect for what I expect. It's not too much. It's enough to whet my appetite to tune in, and I don't feel burnt out. I don't feel like I've had enough of watching Cody or because Cody's not there all the time. The only thing that I will. And I know we said we don't like talking about negativity, but the only negative bit is, and I know it's to build to is road on top of the roads or whatever it is the bringing Brandy out to tell everyone on the show that it's a baby girl and treating it as if it's a reality show. It's no, I want to watch wrestling. I know why they're doing it. And it's a TNT product, and I get that, and I understand that. And you've got to do certain things for the but some of it is just I don't that's not what I tune in for. I don't want to come in and spend 10 minutes, watch 10 minutes of you telling me that with Cody's 4 minute entrance telling me for 2 minutes it's a baby girl to then disappear.
I would think
Do that on a promo backstage.
Cody's entrance is longer than most Labour periods, so I imagine Brandy will have the baby before he manages to come out again. But yeah, I agree with that. And I was just thinking about Cody Eddie, thinking that wouldn't it be nice if they just said like, yeah, he's going home to look after his baby, and they don't need to write him off, because I thought that's where they were going to go with the Penta angle. You know, if he's going to break his arm properly or something, you know, a reason to take him off. But isn't it kind of nice that in this day and age, it would be nice if they just went, yeah, he's having a baby. It's realistic for wrestling fans to expect someone to be home to help.
We know that he's already introduced it all. We were aware of it with all the social media, so there's nothing wrong with coming out and saying,
I'm going home.
Hello everyone, and this, that, and the other. You know, I'm going to text them. I just wanted to give you a shout out to son. So I'm going to take some time out because, as you know, Brandy's we're expecting our first girl, and this is me saying we'll see you down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
It. Even if he sits backstage for 6 months doing his job, it doesn't matter. You don't need. We know why he's written off for TV. It doesn't need to be brought out every week with her rubbing her tummy, going, I can't wait. It's like, that's not what I'm tuning in for. I get why you're doing it. I know why you're doing it, but as a wrestling fan, that's not what I want. I want to watch wrestling, or I want to watch promos.
There you go.
I'm very traditionalist and stuff like that.
No, I agree, and it's nice news for them, yeah. And I think it'd be nice just to say, right, yeah, that's why he's going. They don't have to write him off. You know, it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it, that they always have to be sent off in some dramatic fashion to build a match later on. But these days, everyone knows why he's going. You know, we're all too savvy, so it would be nice, just to say, I'm off. See you soon. And then he'll be refreshed, won't he? Because there is the suggestion that people are, and you heard it at Revolution, people are starting to boo Cody a little, they're starting to turn on him, and you can perhaps see why. You know, I'm a big fan personally, but I could see how, he's got to be very careful, hasn't he, given his position. So I'll say no more. I think we need to wrap this up. So I'm going to hand back over to you, Jolly, to have some final thoughts and any shout-outs and mentions that we need to.
Right, well, thank you. So, as I said, sorry, this has been a bit of a bumper show. Sorry for my camera, I'm still frozen for YouTube people, but appreciate you carrying on listening to us on audio. And just like to say a big thank you to everyone that is listening to us, as this is something that we've wanted to do for a while. We're still a bit raw, as you can tell.
Yes.
But we are passionate. That's the reason why we are raw. We are very passionate, like everyone else. And we just like to say thank you for tuning in. Big shout out to everyone from the John's podcasting network for being very supportive, for sharing us. Big shout out again, as we said at the beginning, to John, our chief head of the table, our Don Callis, our Tony Khan. We just like to say we hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next time. We will be available on social media, as we said. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. We'll put all the links in the descriptions below. We'll put also the website where you can find us and all the other fantastic wrestling podcasting content, including articles as well, in the link in the description below. And all we'd like to just say is thank you so much for joining us for our first show. Just like, share and subscribe if you want to hear any more regarding Impact and AEW from two people that just love the business. Check us out. We'll see you in a few weeks. And as I said, you can join us and follow us and talk to us on social media. If you have any questions, or if you want a question answering from the both of us, from Bear and Chocky T, again, we'll put in our email address on below, or you can hit us up on social media. And again, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Top guys out.
Thank you very much.
See ya.